of trying to make sure that people understand why I feel a certain way. Why this, like what we're going to talk about today, Israel and Palestine is a very emotionally charged conversation, right? And so when you have something that emotionally charged, it is important to think of it from a fact-based standpoint versus having, but the Torah says this, or the Quran says this, or the Bible says this, or Trump says that, or the treaty said this, but the Holocaust, but Iraq, but, there's so many extenuating circumstances when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict. But believe it or not, and I hate to break hearts with this once again, all of it really circles back to one thing, and it's imperialism. And if you think that the Israel-Palestine conflict is about Israel and Palestine, well, ladies and gentlemen, that would be your first logical fallacy, because it's not. It's never been about Israel and Palestine. In regards to the political atmosphere, like in regards to the world in general, the Western world, I mean, it's never been about protecting and saving Jewish people. In case you didn't know, there's a really unfortunate truth that Europeans at large did not like Jewish people, which sucks. I've been there. I'm a black man, so I kind of understand what it's like. But nonetheless, understand that the leaders of Europe, by and large, actually fought against Palestine, or not Palestine, excuse me, Israel being created. By and large, I'm not joking. It's just, like I said, Jewish people will tell you this, because they'll tell you, like, the reason they felt like a justification that has been used, to kind of sway the hearts of Israelis is that there was nowhere for Jewish people to go. So even though they should have went to Hollywood, because they feel like they're pretty welcome there, like they control like all the movies, so right. But no, in all seriousness, they felt like there was nowhere to go, and so they created the state of Palestine to protect Jewish people. That's not actually how it really went down, ladies and gentlemen. That's not how it went down. That's not what Palestine was created for. And we're gonna go into that in a little bit. But before we get started, before we go into all of that, I'll urge you all, if you're watching on Twitter, retweet this, because we're about to drop some truth bombs tonight. It's about to get real. If you're on Facebook, share this wherever you can. Share it into your groups, share it with your family, your friends, tag people in it, invite people to the live stream. Like I said, it's gonna get heated today. And also, if you're watching and you have not yet, make sure you go follow American Freedom Radio on Twitter, follow American Freedom Radio on Facebook. You can obviously go to their website as well. And if you have not yet, join our One Follow $1 campaign, where we continue to show that we do not need the mainstream media anymore. And obviously, as you know, with this net neutrality situation, it is going to become much, much, much more difficult for us to get the truth across. And so please, please, please share, like if you haven't, subscribe if you have not. Go to American Freedom Radio, because if net neutrality passes, which, by the way, I did a video on net neutrality because people kept asking me, what happened to your... It got deleted from all my platforms, or from all of my devices. So I actually had to go back and do it again. And it was a really good video. I liked it. But I digress. So yeah, please like, share, subscribe, donate to the One Follow $1 campaign by going to www.patreon.com/mikasa Now, it's about to get real, folks. So, Trump decided today that he is going to declare that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. Now, President Trump, the last time I checked, is the president of the United States of America. I mean, I I've been a little out of it the last couple of days. You have to understand. I've been distraught. My cat's missing. Asher, my baby boy's gone, so I'm not in my right mind over the last couple of days. Maybe Trump somehow, some way, got elected in Israel and I didn't know about it. Maybe Trump, I know that America, the United States is a pretty imperialist country, but I know we didn't do some fly-by-night operation with the CIA to overthrow Israel and do a undercover coup, did we? No. Did the United Nations at some point in the last 48 hours make a declaration, pass some type of international law somewhere along the lines that Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, now has the authority to declare what a capital is for an entire nation that is not his, that he does not preside over? I don't think so. I wasn't there. I missed that one. I missed that announcement. If there was an announcement, I missed it. But I don't think there was one, right? So, with that being said, I think that it's pretty important to recognize that Donald Trump, for someone who claims to be an isolationist, is pretty ridiculously not isolationist and is not keeping up with his end of the bargain, if you will, when it comes to, let's stay out of these situations. He actually said that he declared Jerusalem to be the capital because Jerusalem not being the capital was not persuading the region to engage in peace any quicker. So, the best thing to do when you're trying to make a region peaceful, you just start handing off holy lands to whoever the hell you feel like it. Because that's clearly what's going to bring peace to the region. That probably works 99% of the time, except for this time. And we know that because, all hell broke loose in Israel, in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem today as a result. And I understand why. I believe it or not, on both sides, I understand why. Jerusalem is a sensitive topic, ladies and gentlemen, and Jerusalem has always been the ultimate goal of the Israeli expansion. If you ever read the Torah or the Bible, then you know why. I'm not gonna go get into all the biblical and religious stuff, not outside of the fact stuff. But if you've ever seen the original map of Israel, before 1948 and even really before then, Jerusalem was clearly in Palestine. Clearly, it wasn't even close. Not even a discussion, right? And that was during the United Kingdom's rule over that area at the time. So, as the occupation started, they just kept kind of building themselves in and expanding their settlements and expanding their territory, breaking every international law along the way. But this is the same president, mind you, because this is what pisses me off. I hate hypocrites. I hate it. Can't stand it. This is the same president that swears up and down that every country needs to obey the rule of law, needs to obey international law. If Iran thinks this, then I'm going to react like this. If North Korea thinks this way, then I'm going to react this way. Right? If China acts like this, I'm going to do this, etc., etc., etc. So whenever Israel has broken international law by every single standard of law you can think of, human rights violations, territorial violations, what happened? So your response to that is, hey, let's just go ahead and make Jerusalem the capital. Shit, since y'all already took over half the land. Does that not make sense to anybody? Just a little bit. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me. It's hypocrisy. It's not only hypocrisy, but in large part, it's pandering. Because Trump knows his conservative followers, for some reason, love Israel. Most of them have no idea why. They get it from the Bible. They don't even love Israel as much as they love the area that is Jerusalem. Israel oftentimes is confused with Jerusalem when we're talking about the promised land. Israel actually refers to an indefinite area, just a general area that is considered the Holy Land that was like this big, was not big at all. And believe it or not, all throughout history, it was primarily known as Palestine. Now, Jewish people always lived there. Arabs always lived there. They didn't always live in peace. They weren't always fighting either. So what changed? And people say, well, there's always fighting in the Middle East. Okay, so what? We didn't have 200 years, 200 and damn near 50 years of straight war in the United States of America? We had a whole civil war. The thing about it in the books, the history books, maybe not in the South, but everywhere else, there's this thing about the Civil War. We had the American Indian War, we had French, we were killing the Native Americans here, like Native Americans fought before we got here, like, yeah, territory was important, and we see why now, considering the United States is how big? Like, territory has always been important. Fighting was the norm in every single society. So trying to pretend like they're more savage because they were constantly at war over territory is narcissistically hypocritical. Pretending that like the United States was any different. We were probably worse. We were probably worse in a lot of ways. Okay? So let's not pretend, right? Let's not pretend that, oh, the Arabs, you know, were always fighting, so we gave it. They were the violent ones. Jewish people were there too, fighting just as much. So that's the whole savagery thing goes out the window. Now let's go into the logistics. This is my favorite part. Let's talk about some history, ladies and gentlemen. Remember what I said in the beginning of the show? For those of you who are just now tuning in, I said at the beginning of the show that this is about imperialism. This has always been about imperialism. It has all. I'm not saying, and you know how people just kind of generally say, oh, it's imperialist, it's imperialist. No, I mean, you can directly connect the dots, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead and walk back to you. At one point during this last century, we had this big war, massive war. I think it was called like World War II or something like that, right? Something like that, or World War II. It was, you know, you probably heard of it. That was a hell of a war, right? You know, the war that in the United States, we always thought that we were the reason that we won. When we were kind of just came in, flew in, dropped the bomb unnecessarily so on Japan, and kind of went on about our business and pretended like we were the big heroes. Now, I don't know if y'all know what happened after World War II. Because what happened after World War II is damn near more important than World War II itself. I know it sounds crazy, but once again, I'm explaining to you why. After World War II, for the first time in maybe a century or so, Western Europe and parts of Western Europe and Central Europe had been obliterated. Economy, almost, you know, they were rebuilding. Germany was destroyed, no longer in the conversation. England was not the dominant, you know, entity in the world. Was not considered the most dominant military wise or otherwise in the world. Right? This is a big deal. And it wasn't just Portugal, saying, because Portugal and Ottoman Empire used to be pretty dominant in that area for a long time too. No longer the case because of their own issues in that area. Right? So Japan out of the picture. China, hurt. They took a lot of casualties during World War II. The only ones that seemed to not take, well, Russia took a lot of casualties too, but they had a lot more people and bounced back a little bit quicker as well. But remember what we do? We sold weapons. We made a lot of money off of everybody, sent a few soldiers overseas, dropped a few bombs, came back. We were the heroes. And now, not only were we the heroes, but remember how we sold Europe all those weapons? We got paid. And Europe's no longer in the picture. So, guess what time it is, ladies and gentlemen? It's takeover time. There were only two hegemons left. That was the United States of America and Russia. Now, I feel like it should be pretty clear at this point, because we know what happened with the Cold War, that they were going at it. We had the arms race. There was the fear of a nuclear holocaust. We just hated each other for no reason, right? Because when you think about it, like really think about that. Russia, like, we gave them the Eastern Bloc, by the way. That's what happened right after the war was over. We gave them, so for those of you who don't know what the Eastern Bloc is, the Eastern Bloc is anything east of Western Europe. So most of you all, when you think of Europe, y'all always think of England, the UK in general, France, Spain, blah, blah, blah. On the other side of that, however, well, you have Central Europe, and then you have Eastern Europeans. So Eastern Europeans would be your Romanians, Bulgaria, at one point Yugoslavia. I mean, all those areas, right? Ukraine. That's the Eastern Bloc. Hungary, Turkey. Russia was not stupid. When they asked for the Eastern Bloc, oh, you best believe the United States put up a fight, ladies and gentlemen. They put up the hell of a fight. Not necessarily for all the Eastern Bloc, but for one state and one country in particular. That's Turkey. Now, keep that in mind. Keep the Turkey part in mind, ladies and gentlemen. So, on our side of the fence, because this is the important part. For those who are like, we did it because we cared about the Jewish people. They cared about them so much. This is the important part. Coincidentally, around the same time, we decided to give Russia the Eastern Bloc. Guess what country all of a sudden decided, or what group all of a sudden got their own state? That's right, Israel. All of a sudden, America cared. Mind you, we were the same country, that pretended the Holocaust wasn't happening for a long time until our Olympic players, were kept out of the Olympics in Germany. We acted like it wasn't even a thing. We pretended like it wasn't a thing. We acted like the Holocaust wasn't even important to us. And all of a sudden after that, we have to give Israel their state. That's the only way Jewish people are going to be safe. Like, and it's crazy because, like, I'm thinking about it now, like, because the Holocaust was horrible. But, like, in retrospect, you had one insane man do an insane thing for insane reasons because of the ignorance of that time period. And, he ended up expanding, of course, to multiple countries to take Jewish people, to get Jewish people rounded up for the Holocaust. But my point is, that was one man in one country in one very extreme situation. And so that warrants literally kicking people out of their homes to make sure that those people are safe? That don't make no sense. So you said we're going to make a sovereign Jewish state and say, hey man, screw those Muslims. I don't know what we're gonna do with them, but they need to get the hell up out the way. We gotta put Israel here. Okay. Well, hey man, you wanna make sure you talk to the Palestinians and the Jordanians and the Arabs and the Jewish people really that already live there. Nah, man, nah. They'll be okay with it. No. In what world? In what time period? In what? Hell, we can even go as far as 150 years, 200 years back. In what world has any country, any area, any region been divided because you're Jewish and you're Christian? Hey, we're just going to put y'all together and just hope it works out. Like, that's never happened. Separating two people because of religion or because of ethnicity is actually something that Russia used to do during communism, during the Soviet days, the USSR days. They used to do that. Type of thing is like that's something that the quote unquote enemy at the time was doing. We did the same thing. Oh, but hey, right? It's okay. It's just to protect the Jewish people. So here's what comes next, right? The years of the fighting, they have the 12 days war, the fights over Gaza Strip, the West Bank. And over time, because I actually used to be extremely pro-Israel in my youth, because I actually was totally ignorant. I'm like 14, 15, 16 years old, because I was ignorant to the totality of the story. And of course, all of this background information that 90% of people don't have, up until like 5 or 6 years ago. Now, you can kind of fast forward a little bit, right? Are any of you familiar with the Carter Doctrine? So the Carter Doctrine came about because Russia was prancing around in Afghanistan. You can do that when you have a place like Turkey. Interesting. So why do we make the Carter Doctrine? What is that? Why do we care about Afghanistan? Israel's in Palestine right now. So why we care about Afghanistan? We ain't got nothing to do with them, right? The picture's starting to get a little bit wider now. So yeah, Turkey. Remember I told y'all that. We fought hard to make sure that Turkey did not fall into Russia's hands, and it did anyway. Oh, but it gets better, ladies and gentlemen. So the Carter Doctrine essentially says that if anybody messes with our interests, the United States interests in the Middle East, then we will attack you full force. Once again, how many people in the 80s when this was created do you think even knew about the Carter Doctrine? That was for the international community to know what was up. Do you know how many people in the 80s have no idea what we were doing overseas in the Middle East? Nobody knew. We were in Egypt at some point fighting over a canal. We were all over the place. But once again, this all stems back to we saw an opportunity to be the most powerful nation in the world, and Russia saw the same thing. Y'all really thought that it was communism versus America. No. Communism was a scapegoat. That's why if you haven't noticed the whole conservatives that they use communism to describe people like as ad hominem attacks, even though communism is really like an economic theory. They use it as an ad hominem source of it. There was a communist. What does that even mean? You're a communist. I don't even understand that's an insult. Like when you ask people why it's an insult, they actually cannot tell you because they don't know, because you can't use it as an insult because it's an economic theory. But we made it about communism because you can't say we want to be the most powerful country in the world and they're stopping us. You made it about making it to outer space first because you can't say we want to be the most powerful country in the world and they're stopping us. You had to keep morale up. The Red Scare was happening because if the Red Scare wasn't happening, then you can't run to Vietnam with all that initial support. And then like obviously people figured it out really quick. Without Russia, you don't run to to Korea to prevent North Korea from taking it over. Like, you know how many things don't happen? That whole thing was making sure that Russia and Russia's allies could not expand and that we maintain the power in the majority of these regions. Now, fast forward a little bit more now. We start getting into the EU. Now, for those of you who are wondering, why is the EU such a big deal? The EU is probably the most important looking glass that you can see this through. So, why did Europe finally grant Israel to the United States? Well, remember what happened last time we had that little fun group, the little club we started right after World War I, so that we wouldn't get into another war that failed miserably in like 20 years because there's another world war started. So yeah, that one failed because actually I think it was because Russia was not involved in it. They said they didn't want to be a part of it. And the next thing that came along was this thing called the United Nations. And guess what we did? We used that as leverage. We said, okay, you just gave Russia the Eastern Bloc, and they had a lot of people die. So we kind of understand that. But we need Israel. And if you don't give us Israel, we're not going to join your United Nations. Hold up. What? I thought this was about Jewish people. Yeah, but nah, not really. It's not about that, actually. We want Israel in the Middle East, and we want them to maintain their occupancy in that Palestine area. Well, shouldn't we go ahead and make Palestine a sovereign nation as well? So that no. Don't be giving people autonomy now. Don't make that country sovereign, because then we have to jump through loops. We have to jump through hoops and bounds to get things done. Where if we just put Israel there, we can just say, hey, go do what the hell you want to do. We'll give you money. It's cool. Wait a minute. So you had the United Nations, and then of course a subset of that sprung up, which is the EU, to make sure that things like World War II don't happen again in Europe. Oh, but here's where it gets even crazier. So the Eastern Bloc, after Russia was finally, the Soviet Russia was finally taken care of, they started working themselves back into the Western European community and the Central European community. By following austerity programs and doing exactly what the West said to do. Nobody really, the EU, the rules to be granted accession into the EU were so arbitrary, and nobody actually knew which ones had to be followed and which ones didn't have to be followed. And here's what I mean by this. Understand, the biggest thing that would keep you out of the EU would be government corruption. Romania and Bulgaria were ranked the two worst corrupt countries in all of Europe. And at one point, they were like top 3 or top 4 in the world. But in 2006, a lot of y'all don't know this, but in 2006, they actually knew the stock market was going to crash, and they had this conversation at the United Nations. Right after that, Romania and Bulgaria were both granted accession into the EU because they actually had two of the most dominant economies in Europe because of they had real estate and they had direct investments from overseas. People invested a lot into Romania and Bulgaria. So mind you, they had to do that because the United States was 25% of Europe's economy at the time. So they couldn't afford for us to crash, and then, that happened. So they let Romania and Bulgaria in. They let Hungary in after Hungary was super corrupt. I mean, I can go down the list. And oh, snaps. Remember I told y'all? Remember I said Turkey was part of the Eastern Bloc? Well, why wasn't Turkey granted accession into the EU? No. I mean, they're part of Eastern Europe. They have Europeans there. They have a lot of Muslims there too. They have Eastern Europeans there. I mean, you let all these other Eastern European countries into the EU. What was the reason? Well, they're too corrupt. Well, wait a minute. Romania and Bulgaria, two most corrupt countries in all of Europe. Why you let them in? Well, they don't really have the economy. Turkey actually had a pretty legitimately sized economy. Well, I mean, their government's pretty corrupt. Yeah, once again, so is Romania, Bulgaria. At the time, Greece's Greece's government was still pretty corrupt. Their economy was not stable. So was Hungary. I mean, you can go down the list. Almost all their governments were still pretty damn corrupt. And then what happened? No, actually, so Lisa said that they were part of the EU. So Turkey was never part of the EU. They just were doing, so you have countries in Europe that are participate in many of the activities of the EU, but are not officially a part of the EU. So they are not 100% protected. A good example of that would be Switzerland. Switzerland was not a part of the EU, so they can maintain their economic sovereignty. But the EU would also does that to countries they don't want in the EU. They do it to a lot of African countries that are colonized by European countries. They keep them out. They dangle them at this little rope. So that's the same thing that they have been doing for a very long time. So they would not allow Turkey into the EU. There's a reason for that. Where do y'all think Turkey is? If you ever go on your little Google Maps, you'll see that Turkey is the border of all those nice little countries that America likes to be a part of. Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, leading into Iran, and everything like that. If you do a little history, don't do a Google search, won't find much there, but you can do a DuckDuckGo search or a Google Scholar search, and you will see that America has tried to set up shop in Turkey quite often. And in fact, we advocated, and actually to my understanding, we still do advocate heavily against Turkey being granted accession into the EU. Because if they do that, then we have to go through the EU in order. And the EU doesn't like us as it is. Like, let's keep it high. The EU does not like the United States. But we try to establish a base in Turkey. We do have troops there, but we try to establish a base in Turkey. It was not happening. They fought it tooth and nail. That's what we did. But why? Why did we try to establish a base in Turkey? Well, like I said, Turkey is right there beside Afghanistan, people. And also, we've always wanted to monitor Russia. Do you know that we tried to infuse like $30 or $40 billion into bringing troops into the Eastern Bloc when Obama was in office? This last 40 or 50 years, the conflict between Palestine and Israel, all of that shit is about Russia and the United States. It's always been about Russia and the United States. It's always been about imperialism. But just like the United States, just like the citizens of the United States, they have been, and I'm telling you this because I have several friends from Israel who leave and they realize, holy shit, I was being brainwashed. Well, it's okay. I tell them all the time, we feel the same damn way here. They've been indoctrinated into the system of believing. They have a saying in Israel, it's and I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but you're gonna get the gist of it. But it's if Arabs lay down their weapons, then there be peace. If Israel lays down its weapons, then there will be no more Israel, or something to that extent. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want y'all to think a little bit realistically here, right? So you have Jordan, Palestine, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Dubai, Qatar. That's a lot of countries, right? A lot of countries, a lot of money. A lot of Arabs, a lot of Muslims, not a lot of Jews. Don't you think if all those Muslims and all those Arabs wanted that little country of Israel gone, that they would be wiped off the face of the planet by now? Don't you think? How can, not only that, But you got the nuclear weapon. You the one with the nuke. Matter of fact, you're the one with the nuke. You're the one getting funneled hundreds of billions of dollars over a decade or so from us. We can't even play black people reparations. That's a whole different goddamn discussion. People are like, we don't know how we're going to play black people. We can't do that. It's just way too hard to figure out if you was a slave, a black slave in America, or a black slave in the islands of the Caribbean, or a black slave in South America, because that matters. We said we can't figure out how to give reparations to black people, but they're like third, fourth generation Jewish people in Israel right now, Israelis who have a social security card in the States, a social security card or an identification card in Israel, got dual citizenship, get their school paid for here, get their school paid for there, get free health care here, get free health care there, and we can't figure out how the hell to pay reparations back to the black people. And y'all think this is about Jewish people suffering. It's never about Jewish people suffering. Because guess what? You know how many Jewish people in Israel right now are stomping on black Israelis, the Sephardim, from Ethiopia, from that area. Dark Arabs. It's never been about, you know how much of that state is secular? It's like 40 or 50% of the people in that country identify as secular. They don't even read the Torah. Most of them aren't even kosher. It's like we pretend that we're a country of Christians. There are a lot of people who have been indoctrinated. A lot of Israelis who have been indoctrinated. But guess what? If you look at Netanyahu's numbers, they don't like him. Because you believe over a certain period of time, people believe things that they're told. They believe that they should actually be scared of everybody. Like, why I don't understand. How can we being here just existing, because people feel like the people of Israel legitimately feel like they're being attacked for existing, and that's not the case. And this is coming from someone from the United States, so understand something. I actually got into a discussion at work today about this. Do you think terrorist attacks just happen out of nowhere? Do you think you can recruit people to kill themselves with absolutely no propaganda to work with? You walked onto someone else's land, established a sovereign government there, fed them billions and billions and billions of dollars, and then at the same time told Palestinians, you are not a real country. So of course, you're going to have terrorists form. Is that the right solution? Absolutely not. But I'm also not an idiot. You take my land, you take my home, you take my livelihood, you've killed my children, you've killed my family, you take my rights away, and if you think that rights are equal in the settlements, ask if Israelis are allowed to carry guns in the settlements, and then ask if a Palestinian is allowed to carry a gun in the settlement. I can tell you the answer. The answer is no. Palestinians are not allowed to carry guns in their own settlements, in their own homes, on their own land, or what was previously their land. Stop letting them convince you, stop letting the world convince you that Israel's somehow a victim. Israel, the government is extremely corrupt. The people of Israel even know this. Netanyahu is notoriously corrupt. He is fed into the idea that, we're just the victim. We're the victim with the nuclear weapon who gets $35 billion in funding and has the most intelligence, not in the Middle East, not just generally, but they have the most advanced intelligence in the world. Their intelligence surpasses ours. We rely on them for intelligence. We rely on them for weapon innovations. You can't step in my house and say, well, that cop said that your yard is now half of my yard. I don't give a shit what that cop says. You're going to have to take this from me. Of course you're going to get terrorists. It happened in the United States. We messed in countries we should not have been messing with, because all of this comes down to oil. Because to be the biggest country, to be the empire that we have made an attempt, and at this point seemingly successfully so, to be the empire that the United States wanted to be the empire that Russia wants to be, and still wants to be, because we're still in the middle of what started this Palestine-Israel conflict 70, 80 years ago. We're still dealing with it. This is what this whole Russia-United States thing is about right now. It's still about this. Europe is never going to catch back up to the United States as far as economic prosperity, obviously, because we've also put ourselves in a position where we have all the land. So even if we converted to a resource-based economy, we would still be the dominant economy. Everything we've done up until this point has been to be an empire. All the the free trade agreements that regulate trade, which makes it not free. How ironic. But all those things. You think Netanyahu was really scared of Arab countries when he took huge campaign donations from Saudi Arabia? Come on, people. Come on. They like to, the people of Israel being harmed. Yes, the people of Israel being harmed. The people of Palestine are being harmed too. I'm going to tell you, like I told a friend of mine who's from Israel, I said, do you want peace or do you want to get even? Because that's the end of that. For the people of Israel and Palestine, they're in a circumstance that neither of the people could control. If you're born in Israel right now, if you're born in Palestine, you're in a conflict that you have absolutely no control over, outside of obviously getting older, participating in politics, and going on to be an activist. But I'm saying, like, you're mad because your friend got killed by this Palestinian who had his friend killed by an Israeli soldier, who had his friend killed by a Palestinian. And the cycle is continued. So do you want to get even? You want to be mad? Or do you want peace? Because the first thing that both Israel and Palestine, the people of both countries, need to realize is that they're in the midst, they're pawns. They're pawns. And trust me, the United States, the people, the citizens of the United States, we know about being pawns. Anybody who served in the war in Iraq knows all about being pawns. We know they took our emotions, made us feel like the victims, and then somehow it went from this guy from a rich royal member of the Saudi family, who magically became a terrorist after being trained by the CIA, who attacked us and set the whole thing up, supposedly, and ended up in Afghanistan, means, hey, y'all, we got to go attack Iraq. Yeah, let's do it. That makes sense. I think. Let's do it. We've been pawns too. I know how it feels. We all know how it feels. But once again, do you really feel like it's worth it? This is once again to the people of both countries. Do you feel like it's worth it to keep perpetuating the war that was never about either of you? They didn't care. They don't care about your lives. They don't care. Netanyahu doesn't care about your life. The United States does not care about the fact that you're Jewish. We don't care. Like, the government, the elitists, the corporatists behind this movement don't give a shit about the Holocaust. Like I said at the beginning, they knew about the Holocaust and we still competed in the Olympics. And even when our Jewish athletes were banned, we still didn't do anything about the Holocaust. But when we were finally attacked, all of a sudden, we got to go talk about the Holocaust. We got to go deal with this. We were the biggest advocates of Israel, even though we didn't do a damn thing about the Holocaust. Didn't do a damn thing about it. We were focused on Japan, if you recall. So no, Jerusalem, or Jerusalem for you Hebrew speakers, no, it is not the capital of Israel. For those of you who also don't know, just another fun fact. If you take an Israeli and put them in front of like a Brooklyn Jewish, like a Brooklyn Hasidic Jew, they can't understand each other. And that's because people keep trying to claim, oh yeah, you know, is Jewish people always had a sovereign state there? Like, is Israel always been? It hasn't been. Just like they said, Israel was indefinite. It's literally what it says in the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. It was indefinite. Like the land was just kind of there. It's like a general description of this holy land. It doesn't mean they use the term. Even ironically enough, it was in the area of Palestine. I know it sounds really familiar, doesn't it? Palestine. Couldn't imagine what that sounds like. But now, in all seriousness, they use the state of Israel. They use the name of Israel for that state, for that area, for that sovereign nation, because they knew the emotional and historical attachment to that name. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Jewish people have also, like they always like to remind us, because remember, that's one of the things that the critics always like to say, the supporters of the Israeli state house. Jewish people are always living in Palestine, in that area. Okay, so why not call it Palestine? Anybody? Why not call it Palestine? Why not just make Palestine a sovereign nation and make Israel a city within Palestine, or an area or a state within Palestine, like in Palestine, like it always has been historically? Why not? Why not call it Palestine instead of Israel? Because even Jewish historians who were there at the founding of Israel know the area was called Palestine. Because they wanted to garner the emotional reaction they needed to make people, the average person, you, me, you know, the average person, to make us feel like to make them have an emotional reaction to it. That's why they called it Israel instead of Palestine. Because it was the Israelites versus the Philistines. Because it was Jewish versus Arab. Because Palestine, in actuality, represents the unity. The name of Palestine represents the unity of that region. Because Jewish people lived in Palestine, and people will remind you of that. They'll tell you, Jewish people lived in that area when it was called Palestine. There was never an issue. Not that there was never an issue. There's always territorial issues. But it wasn't an issue as far as Jewish versus Muslim. All right? They didn't call it Palestine for a reason. They didn't make Palestine a... Because you said, oh, Arabs just didn't accept the fact that Israel is its own state. Okay. No, I don't think that was the issue. I don't think that was the issue at all, right? Because why are we still having this discussion about Jerusalem right now? Because you decided, yeah, we'll go ahead and make Israel a state, but we're not going to make Palestine a state, so we don't have to have this discussion in the future. Do you understand how much death would have not happened if they would have just said, this is Israel, this is Palestine? And yeah, people are like, they didn't accept it because of A, B, C, and D. I don't expect everyone to accept it because you just came into my land and told me that this is occupied and for no reason other than my people have been persecuted. Once again, black people still over here looking like, ain't this about a... Where can I be black without being persecuted? Because you can't even go to Africa without... People like, black people have Africa. Have you tried going to Africa and not being in a country that's been imperialized and colonized? It's pretty damn hard. It's not a joke. Like, you have obviously areas where that's not the case, but you're still feeling the ramifications of European colonization in Africa today. So no, it's not the same thing. You can't say go to Africa because nobody else has what Jewish people have in Israel, and it's because the United States has worked to keep it that way. Why do you think the United States has worked to keep it that way? Why do you think we've been in Iraq this whole time? Why do you think we came up with bullshit reasons to stay in Iraq and to stay in Afghanistan? Why do you think we tried to occupy a part of Egypt at one point in the 80s? I want to say the late 70s or early 80s. Why do you think we tried to establish a place in Turkey, ladies and gentlemen? Why? Why do you think we just put Venezuela on the ban list for trying to abandon the petrodollar? Why do you think we absolutely refuse to stop fracking? Everything is connected. Everything is connected. Everything. It's all one big web. It's all reaction. It's action, reaction. World War II happened. Western Europe was obliterated. Russia was like, oh shit, we can be the most dominant country in the world. The United States is like, oh shit, we can be the most dominant country in the world. And the only thing that's standing between us is Russia, who just lost a crap load of people. And they can't even feed their people because communism sucks without capitalism first. So, hey, let's take it over. And then they distracted people with everything that you can think of in between. Think of everything you can think of. People were distracted by the war, the race to the moon, the race to space, television, you know, all that good stuff. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope this is a little educational for you, and I definitely urge you to share this video. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, more important than anything, find your balance. Peace.